Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're talking with one of my friends, Jacob, who is currently a postdoctoral researcher in organizational behavior. We started out together as freshman roommates, randomly assigned together, and so we've never really been on the same kind of career path. But rather than talking about his specific job, since he spent a lot of time in academia doing research, I've been more interested in just kind of his journey of how he decided what he wanted to do and kind of how he got to where he is. And so, if you're here for a specific, this is my job, this is what to expect every day, sorry to disappoint, you should definitely still watch the video. It's interesting. It's kind of more of a wandering conversation. If you need to put it on double time speed, then please go ahead and do that. Don't forget to share this with your career curious friends. And for this video especially, I think it's useful for young people who are maybe just starting out in college and deciding what they want to do with their lives. I hope you enjoy. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Jacob Brown, and I study people at work. So I'm an organizational researcher. That's what I do.
Okay, organizational researcher. Now, this conversation, like we talked about yesterday, is going to be a little bit different than some of the conversations that I usually have because, well, actually, no. First, tell us about your job. What do you actually do now? We'll start there.
My official role is I'm a postdoc, so a postdoctoral research scholar, trying to become a faculty member at a business school. So the nuts and bolts of my job vary, but I'm conducting research about organizations, of a couple different ones, and then I do various tasks for the postdoc. I teach, I prepare trainings, evaluate material, etc. That's what I do.
Okay, and what is it that you're actually studying when you're a
Broadly,
researcher?
broadly, what I study is values in organizations, or kind of baseline priorities that form how organizations and individuals commit themselves to certain things. So I study that in a couple different ways. The NFL, my dissertation was at the DMV, studied the Army for about 8 years, um, different organizations.
What values does the DMV have, Jacob?
I'm trying to write that paper that's kind of pushed down the line. Um, I think that they say that their values are taking care of people and helping them find solutions. I think their actual values are efficiency, and efficiency, with somewhere further down the line, taking care of people. The employees would say taking care of people and respecting them is really high. Efficiency is definitely at the top for the organization. Yeah,
And oh man, I could just go down a rabbit hole on just that
me too.
on the DMV. Were you looking in one specific state, Illinois, where you are, or was this before in
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts? Okay.
Yeah, I did school in at Boston College, and I studied a local. They call it the RMV there. So that was and it was an ethnographic study, which means that I spent a lot of time at that location. And anyway,
So back in college, I used to, when I'm studying mechanical engineering and you're studying psychology, and I would kind of jab you a little bit for social sciences not really being sciences and on and on. And I feel like I have to apologize for that because engineering is not science, and
it's an application.
I mean, I've never claimed that it was science. The classes that I was taking in college were all science, but engineering itself is application. And now in my current job as a data scientist, because of the job that I'm in, it's almost entirely social science kinds of things. um, anyway, we're not talking about me this time, but yeah, it's interesting how when you're talking about like physics as a science, in many ways, physics now or at least Newtonian physics, like when what people are thinking about as physics, is not really science because most of the questions have been answered hundreds of years ago. And so we know if you push a ball down a hill, what's going to happen. We don't have to really test that anymore.
Sisyphus has to bring it up again. That's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Um, okay. So the reason why I really wanted to talk to you is your current job is interesting that you get to research and find out about stuff, but it's also kind of temporary. You've been a student for a really long time, and this is the in between. Okay, we're done studying, we're done with the PhD, and now we're looking to become a professor or kind of for what's next. So, what I'm really interested in was when we were college freshmen assigned randomly together as roommates. Um, and I had kind of an idea of what I wanted to do. You, if I remember correctly, didn't really have an idea at the beginning. And so take us from there, playing Super Mario 3 as fast as you can in one day,
World,
to where
world. Yeah.
Super Mario World. Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be clear.
Yeah. Okay. Take us from there to where you are now and where you're going in the future.
Wow. Okay. I'm a first generation college student, so I should start with there. I did not have expectations for college, and my high school experience was pretty. It was one of those experiences where it was a large enough school where you could participate in a lot of pretty cool things at a high level, but it wasn't so big that you had to specialize, right? So, given and I had a very competitive and very competent, driven group of friends, and everybody wanted to go to BYU, and that's what I said that I wanted to do too. A lot of people have deep institutional connections to BYU as a through from their family. It goes back generations. Not for me, right? And trying to being sort of dropped into BYU after applying, um, I felt like so music was my first declared major, right? And I thought choral conducting, because that was something I did pretty prolifically in high school and also as a missionary later in Brazil. But I got into some of these pre-music classes, and it was interesting. And I I think the main thing that occurred to me then was I felt like my specialness was non-existent.
Yeah.
I thought that everybody else was smarter than me, everybody else was more driven than me. I look back now and I see that that wasn't the case. But what I was trying to figure out was what spoke to my interests and what spoke to my skills. And at the time, the most salient skills that I could see were music based,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was interesting. That's what I thought, because I love music, as do you, but it would never be my job. So coming back from a mission, I had a lot to atone for. No pun intended. I did. You have to work incredibly hard to get as bad of grades as I did, just to illustrate whatever people think is a good GPA, or even I got I think a point 0.9 GPA the second semester of freshman year. So I came back on academic probation and realized that I can do things, and I just need to know sort of which direction. So I thought, okay, business sounds like the right way to go. So I declared for the business major. You have to take the prerequisite classes. Got it sort of through those, and I looked to the left and to the right, and I saw a lot of people that seemed to want to eat money, smell money. Like they just seemed like they were killers in a way that I was definitely not. And to be fair, they may have been sort of putting on a show, and it's just a kind of a competitive place. I didn't feel like that part of the business world fit what I was looking for, and I also didn't have a way to really articulate um, what my strengths were at the time. I knew that I could write. That's always been a strength of mine. And on like tests and things, I knew that that's something I could do. But I didn't really think about that as an application for my job, right? And so finding psychology came a couple of years into the BYU experience where I was taking student development classes, a speed reading class, a like study management class, kind of putting arrows in my quiver, so to speak. And psychology and sort of thinking about why people do things. I had worked a variety of jobs up to that point, and in college, I worked a number of jobs. Um, Early morning custodian, worked at the as sort of different restaurants. I was a waiter, and I realized as I went through psychology that thinking about work and why people do things at work was interesting to me. And as I continued to sort of apply what I was learning in sort of social psychology classes, leadership courses, I saw that there were sort of natural things from my life. Um, as a missionary, for example, you're put into a leadership hierarchy that's very clearly outlined, and there's a very strong sort of organizational structure. The church that we both belong to also has a clear hierarchy. And so I saw that I was sort of naturally ingrained to study those things because I
Yeah.
have been sort of embedded in them my whole life. But I didn't know how to get into the field of studying this stuff. So I started sort of from a psychological perspective and got into like relationships research with my favorite metaphor to talk about trying to figure out college as a first gen student is it's the island that cannot be found except by those who already know where it is, right? From Pirates of the Caribbean. So you're like
Hmm.
trying to figure out from faculty members, friends like you were for have been for me, to try to pick up pieces of the map to sort of find your place. And so, getting to the end of the degree, I realized that graduate school was something that you could decide to do. It wasn't like
Yeah.
you know someone from heaven reached down and said you will go to graduate school and you are special.
Yep.
You just apply and take a test. And so I did that and did well enough and saw that there was people that I was working with to speak to this idea of figuring it all out on the fly. I had a friend who was in the IP&T or instructional psychology and technology program. So I thought that seems like it's sort of organizationally work relevant. Maybe I can be like a trainer or teach people how to do stuff from a psychology perspective. I also landed a job. Which was so silly to me to think about this now. I had no experience and just a lot of gumption and desire. And I ended up getting hired at what was previously called LES Business College as an instructional designer, at the same time that I was enrolled in an instructional design program, essentially.
Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
quickly saw that that was not a path that I wanted, but it also armed me with an idea of how to teach good, right? And what
Uh-huh.
it means to teach. I'm probably going a little bit too slow, but as I took a class on management consulting, and I found out that you could do business research, and it was in this business sphere, which I had always thought I was interested in. They just called it organizational behavior or organizational studies or whatever. And so I started doing research with people there, and I felt like my skills in writing, my interest in learning and reading about things, and my natural sort of proclivity for being a bit obsessive about why things work, maybe being a bit too, if ruminatory is a right is a word that exists. I have a tendency to ruminate on my own sort of weaknesses and also on aspects of the world. And I saw that research actually presents a way to directly consider your questions. And given that I came sort of from psychology, I was prepared for hypothesis testing and for the deductive, the hypothetical deductive model of science. But then I started to become exposed to qualitative and inductive methods, where basically you're using insights from the field that are derived through observation, that are derived through interviews, and archival data sets. It's a very different way of doing research, and it just kind of spoke to me. Applied to Boston College and other places, and we had a few different opportunities, but that felt like the best fit. And to incredibly summarize, I started to find that concepts like authenticity and humility, integrity, inclusivity, all sort of related to this idea of values and what is of sort of baseline importance to people. And so It's basically been this whole exercise of, at this point, almost 15 years of postgraduate education and training is trying to think about why people care about the work that they do and
Yeah.
the things that they do in their life, and how to try to sort of close a gap between what is aspired and what is actual. Because we are humans, and we can't quite match our aspirations, but we still want to try. Anyway, that's the summarized version. And I'm sorry if I went too long.
First, how do you feel like you could have been better prepared to hit the ground running when you got to BYU? Or was it something that you just had to slog through?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think intellectually I was prepared. I had performed very well in some difficult classes, and I think I was ready for that. I think lifestyle is something that I could have been sort of introduced to. I was used to being sort of shepherded to various activities. Okay, you're in football now. Go to practice. That's basically
Yeah.
all entire responsibility, and
Yeah.
you've outsourced your decision making. So I didn't really. I was in shape because I participated in things where I was basically told what to do, and then I
Yeah.
gained 40 pounds as a freshman of bad weight. Um, I had classes that I was assigned to participate in, with some exceptions in high school, and then you are basically, the world is your oyster. And I had taken like a couple student development type classes where they say, "What's your career?" And I remember in high school they said, HR seemed like, or sorry, PR was something that I seemed interested in, like the communication between organizations and
Hmm.
external constituents. And maybe, like, I remember I visited one firm in Portland and toured a little bit. I had no internships. So part of me feels like what's happened has happened, and trying to sort of rewrite history would be difficult.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I would say is having sort of a better holistic understanding of what college feels like, which I couldn't have known. And so I guess
Yeah.
having had different parents who had gone to college, maybe.
Well, I mean, my parents went to college, and I also was unprepared for a lot of those same things.
That's
I
not
I
how it happened
remember.
to me.
Well, so when we let's see, my freshman year, I knew that I wanted a music minor, but I
Which is
knew I didn't want a music major, right? So I took all of the classes that you need for the minor. A lot of them count for generals or whatever.
yeah.
Um, and I was leaning towards mechanical engineering already. And so I took statics my last semester. And the way that the class was structured back then, it was only 2 credit hours or whatever. But I, so my first semester was like high school for me, but more flexible and less wasted time, right? I really felt like this isn't any harder than high school, and I don't have to sit in school all day, right? I get to go home for lunch every day, whatever. Um, but then my second semester, I finally took one challenging class, statics, and I had to do all of my homework in the TA lab to get help to like learn how to do stuff. And then go on a mission and come home. And after my mission, the same thing happened with my physics class where, okay, I got how to do this on the last assignment. Wait a second, you mean the class that we had 2 days ago is something completely different from the class we had today? And I have to learn them both and return the homework before Friday tomorrow? Anyway, it just seemed like the pace I was completely unexpected, like how to just keep up. And yeah, you actually have to learn the stuff and you have to do it as you go through the semester. Whereas in high school, kind of like you, kind of being shepherded from place to place, you've got so much time to waste and it's not really rushed. So there's not an urgency like you actually have to work to learn the stuff. That's the kind of slap in the face I got was when I actually had to like sit down and be like, okay, this is going to be hard. I'll do it, but I actually have to take time. It's not like my first semester where it was just more flexible and easy, right?
This may be further down the rabbit hole than you want to go, but I think of two factors that speak to what you were saying in my case. The first is I tended to be um, throw it on the pile type thinking in terms of how I set up my schedule. And because I did a lot of different things in high school, a lot of extracurriculars, a lot of sports, a lot of involvements, and rushed is how I felt all the time, from
Yeah.
basically my, especially my senior years, where it sort of peaked in terms of busyness and output required of me. Junior year too, but then another factor was sort of, I would call it um, personal growth problems, where as an 18-year-old you're growing, and obviously you're growing all through your life, but there were some pretty significant things that I didn't realize about myself, that I thought I just didn't have and couldn't get. So for example, you talked about going to the TA lab and spending all that time. I think I would have thought, I'm not getting this, I'm just not good enough to get this, I can't get it, which is silly, and that's a fixed mindset, right? And if you need to go do something, you figure out the steps to go do it. But I think a couple things learning later in life as a PhD student that I have ADHD, for example, trying to figure out, how to pay attention to things that I'm not interested in when you have to read hundreds of pages of, sociological texts for class every week. That was something hard. Realizing, dealing with some amount of uh, depressive or anxiety oriented symptoms, and trying to figure out how to structure life is something that I didn't quite realize was so important for college. And then you get sort of thrust into it and you figure it out. But figure it out by mistake was my word.
Yeah. I'm remembering now, when we used to work out together every once in a while. I don't know if I've ever told you this since then, but I remember both exercising with you, and also I think you maybe were taking a math class when we were roommates at some point, and I was trying to help you with that or something. And I remember observing retroactively how when we're exercising in the morning and you're pushing me to lift the heavier thing, or you can do another rep, or you can go heavier than that. And I'm just like, I don't want to. Why? I don't care. I'm getting exercise. Who cares? I'm not going to try and push myself. And then later, helping you with math homework. And I'm just being like, come on, Jacob, you're so close. You're like right there. And it's just interesting to see uh, that difference in the back and forth there, right? Anyway, I don't know if
Yeah.
I ever told you that before. I thought of that
And
recently.
we did most of that in like that would have been junior senior year for us, right?
Yeah, my hardest academic year. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Where things get more serious for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
Um,
interesting.
so okay, do you feel like you've been in school for too long or done too much school?
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, it has kept me up at night in a very literal sense. I have felt like now I'm 35 and I'm wasting time, or I'm behind where I need to be, and it has. I've come to peace with it because I'm in pursuit of something and I'm making progress. But there have been times where that progress has been sort of fuzzy, or where the tangible steps to get to what I'm hoping for are they just seem impossible. In those moments, I've been very tempted to conclude that this is just kind of a huge sham, or I have research ideas that basically any good researcher, or I would say the difference between a good researcher and a truly excellent researcher is persistence, and being able to conclude that, yeah, I was wrong before. Let's try this a different way. Not taking that personally, realizing just, okay, back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Good ideas, truly good ideas that are going to have, let's say, their day in the sun, right, and make an impact. They don't just happen. They are actively pursued, and it takes the time that it takes. I have definitely felt that I've been in school too long. And I mean, I started in 2008, and with the exception of a 2 year mission, I've been in school then or ever since, or some kind of preparation. And I've had jobs and other things interspersed. And I don't regret it necessarily because, like, all of us can improve, and there are certainly things that I could have done better. But I look at where we are now, and I'm grateful for where we are. That doesn't mean that I don't want to be in a different spot, and I don't feel like I'm still paying rent on a place that we do not own. For example, I don't own my own car. I don't have an office really, except for the one I'm sitting in upstairs in our house. Um, in that way, I feel behind. But in another sense, I look at some of my other friends um, who've been in their jobs for about 10 years and who are already sick of it.
Yeah.
And maybe they've made a good living so far, and maybe not. But maybe there's a different sort of element of stability that they're looking for, which is more of a purpose-driven stability, or more of a meaning-based stability, or a moral sense of what am I really contributing. I feel pretty confident that in that department, I will not be lacking in my career because I've front loaded a lot of that work by virtue of finding the things. No, in terms of intrinsic versus extrinsic, I do care about the extrinsic. I want a high paying job. I want to have the stability of a tenured faculty member. Blah blah blah. To have the coats with the patches on the sleeves
Yeah.
and the whole 9 yards, the absurd scarves or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but the intrinsic piece, I enjoy the work that I get to do, and it just needs to get some traction, honestly. So, and it's already.
Okay. You brought this up. I have to take the tangent. Do the robes from Boston College, are they just standard black robes with the things on the sides, or
No, it's very. You're a wizard, Harry. Like, it's very Hogwarts.
okay.
And when I wore them, I was feeling it. It was great.
Yeah. I'll have to like paste in a picture of that here because the whenever you're at graduation for engineers, you can always tell MIT and you can always tell Georgia Tech because MIT robes are gray and red, and Georgia Tech robes are yellow and purple. And someone might get mad at me for calling it yellow and purple. There's maybe some fancier name, right? But one of the reasons why I thought about it was, hey, if you get a PhD from Georgia Tech, you get to wear those things,
Yeah,
once at graduation, unless you become a professor, which I did not want to be.
I don't blame you. The
Anyway,
yeah, it that's a separate conversation, but yeah, it's interesting how we deal with celebrations and sort of the antiquities of the robes of the false priesthood and all
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Okay, so here's another question. I am in the spot where I've been in my career for not quite 10 years. I remember thinking when I was growing up, hey, I don't want to be a doctor because they have to go to so much school. And then when I graduated with my master's degree in MBA,
Your two
I
masters.
realized I realized that my friend who graduated high school at the same time as me was graduating from medical school at the same time. Granted, he had to do some other stuff with he went through the military to pay for his medical training, and so he still had some obligations. But it was just kind of funny to realize, like, actually, depending on the career path you decide on and the educational path you decide on, it might not be that straightforward, or these ones that seem really long might not be that much longer than whatever else.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'm. What strikes me now in the context of our conversation is that education unlocks opportunities, but or I'll just say training, because education is typically associated with universities, and I don't want to make I want to make sure that it's broad enough to cover all opportunities for growth, pre-professionally. Um, the person that you would like to become is basically what the last however many years has represented, and then you iteratively instantiate the person that you would like to be, right? As you perform your work and as you go throughout your life responsibilities as a parent, as a husband or a wife or whatever it is. And I feel like I've gained in the past 15 or so years. I remember specifically having that same insight that you did, that there was somebody that I met early in my life who had gone to school for 12 years, college. And I just thought that that was preposterous. And I've exceeded that now by a number of years. And I could see that as an exorbitant waste of time. But I also have started to see that the contributions that I'll be able to make are very different from what I was going to be seen as being able to make before, even though like the core of me remains, right? I'm the same person. I have different experiences and some skills that are different, but I think thinking about it in that sense, rather than like, what do you want to do? It's like, who do you want to become? What's the kind of person that you want to become? And for me, I want to be the kind of person who helps others become who they were supposed to be. Um, in the context of work, right? In the context of getting up every day and going to your job. I think that I am prepared now to be able to do that, to help people get real with who they are, get real with who they're, the person that they're envisioning, how to sort of make steps to get closer to that in the context of work. Um, if you're a leader in an organization, what can you do to consider who are we as a group, right? Who are we supposed to be? Anyway, that's an aside.
That this field sounds like a whole great bonus episode that we could. I mean, someday when this channel has 1 million subscribers and we want to do the professional tier or whatever, um, or maybe just another episode sometime. I what I'm thinking about when you're talking through all of that is the person that I want to be in my career is, or at least the person that I've always told myself that I want to be in my career, doesn't have a lot to do with the job that I'm doing every day. In other words, I just want a job that will pay the bills and give me enough flexibility to be with my family and do the things that I want to do. Um, and in fact, my current job right now, data science, really cool, really interesting. Pharmacy benefit data, pretty boring. And I mean, there are people on my team who would disagree with me and they love their jobs, and that's great that they love their jobs, right? But when you come from designing a rocket to working on pharmacy benefit data, my actual time at work is probably not as exciting as it was before. But this job comes with so much more flexibility that my life is so much better than it was, even though the subject matter of my job was maybe more interesting in the past.
Yeah. Trade-offs, right? And trying to
Yep.
figure out um, what are the norms within a particular profession, and what are the actual tasks, like the content that you have to engage in. Um, I look at the future jobs that we might have as a tenured faculty member, for example. And for me, having the ability to research things that I care about, that I find intrinsically interesting, doesn't feel like work. Um,
Yeah.
that's not completely true, right? There are very arduous, difficult aspects of that, like trying to figure out a contribution to the literature, right? Trying to explain something new, trying to deal with reviewer comments who always hate your work when you submit to a journal. Um,
I was the first. I was the first. I claimed that I was your first reviewer, and you rightly discarded a lot of my feedback because I always read it from an engineer perspective of get to the point. I don't care. Yeah,
Interesting. I remember that now with the
yeah,
statement of
yeah.
purpose. Is that right?
I don't remember exactly what it was. An application or something. I don't
Yep.
remember.
Yep. Um, yeah, and learning how to prepare for exactly what you just said in terms of the balance of uh, the life that you would like to live, the contributions that you would like to be able to make, the substance of the work. For some, it really doesn't matter, and you say, yeah, I have skills, and I clock in and I do my work, and um, that's, I think, being able to accept that there are different modalities and different opportunities, especially now in 2025. But for sure, that's important to me too.
Yeah. If you want to be found, where can people find you?
Oh,
Are
gee.
you
Um, the I guess you could look up my Google Scholar page if you. I have a website. It's admittedly more of a marketing based website, but my professional title, I guess, or professional name is Jacob A. Brown. And so if you look up Jacob A. Brown and you search for concepts like authenticity and values, you'll find me. Some of our work on has already been published, and so you can find some of that work on LinkedIn. I tend to remain, I like to ask questions and I like to post there. Um, Jacob Brown 90, I think, is my sort of name. I'm not particularly active on social media and stuff as a like producer, as a more of a consumer, but that's where you can find me.
okay? Great. One question I'm just remembering now. Over this whole academic career that you've had so far, do you feel like you are in a good spot for a stable career in the future,
Yes,
now and in the future? Yeah.
yes. Yeah, one benefit of coming from a place of very low expectations for my earnings is I feel like in some ways I've already achieved what I wanted to do, and to potentially triple my current salary. That's pretty exciting, and that's the reality. Um, so yeah, I feel pretty stable, even though it doesn't always, not every day. If
Even
you have
though,
preparation, then yes, it could be stable.
right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but usually postdoc researcher is not a kind of long term career,
No,
right?
it's the space. If the Adam God painting, it's the space in between their
In
fingers.
between the fingers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sistine Chapel, the postdoc
Uh-huh.
right there.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, that's interesting. It's also interesting because the lab that I came from at Georgia Tech had a whole staff of postdoc researchers employed as um, research engineers, and for many of them, that was kind of their whole career. That was they just wanted to keep researching, and they weren't tenured faculty. They were technically working for another professor
Yeah.
within the school, but that was a great job for them. They were okay with that. That's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It was really fun to catch up with Jacob and learn a little bit more about his career. Again, I'm really glad that you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with all of your career curious friends.
Tell me what is it